All right, so super excited to be here. As he said, weather farming, you learn to live with it. Sometimes you don't love it. We actually just had a phone call today with a lady in North Carolina, and it's always change the plan, never the goal. So you understand the goal at the end and what you're trying to accomplish, and sometimes you've got to pivot throughout the season and make it worth it. So that's kind of our mentality as we go through life, season, and what we do. So very excited to be here. I'm glad we were able to reschedule it and I didn't have to do this over live stream and things like that. So, all right, so to quickly introduce myself, crop research scientist. You can find a lot of articles online about different talks and things that I do. I'm very passionate about agriculture, advocating for agriculture, and just educating to bridge that gap between consumers and producers, just because of how we've evolved. We've needed less farmers and less farming space, and we've got more people moving to urban areas. And so it's important that we maintain that connection some way so people understand where their food, fuel, and fiber is coming from. I also have my husband here, Aaron, also co-founder of South Bend Industrial Hemp. This was actually him and his brother Richard's idea. They're fourth generation farmers in the Great Bend area, and they approached me back in 2019 when hemp was legalized in Kansas, and they said we should do this. And I think one thing that makes me so passionate about advocating for agriculture and specifically the hemp crop is because when they brought it to me, I was adamantly against it. I had negative stigmatism. I didn't understand the plant. I didn't know the history. And so once I started to learn more and learn about the potential and what you see up here in these products that I'm passing around, it really kind of kicked me into overdrive that, yeah, let's do this. So, and it takes a team. We also have two agronomists they're independent and they work on farm with us. They've been with us for over a decade. So again, making that team and fitting all these pieces together that are strong in different areas. And these guys are the best in terms of agronomics, nutritional needs, soil health, cover crops, a lot of these things that are, hot buttons now or, are cool, we've been doing for over a decade. And so it's kind of interesting to see society shift in that way and bring some of these practices that we've been doing in central and western Kansas for quite a while. These are some of our goals, and I share these because I think it's important that you understand who we are, what we do, and what our goal is every day, every season that we're producing. We are extremely passionate about the fiber and grain industry. We understand that there's a CBD industry, and there's the marijuana and the medicinal and the great purposes that those serve. But we, on our farming operation, are very suited for fiber and grain. So we'll educate about the CBD. We can talk about it. We do tours all the time. But you can see that our expertise is in large-scale agriculture. Another thing that's extremely important to us is that we're utilizing equipment that we already have on the farm. Waste or being able to repurpose budgets, the economy and things like that. It's important that farmers are able to utilize equipment that they already have and that processors can utilize equipment that is already within other industries, so we're not having to start from scratch all the time. And then lastly, education and advocacy, which is one of the reasons why I'm here tonight. So, quick growing history. We've been doing this since 2019. We did 80 acres of dry land. When we give recommendations and talk to farmers and get to talk to just the general public and things like that, I'm very confident in the recommendations that we give, because if you can do it wrong, we've done it. We've checked that box, we've figured it out, and we figured out what worked and what didn't. 2019 was one of those years that we learned everything not to do. And so naturally we were like, let's do it again in 2020. We learned from our mistakes, had a very successful year. And that's when we started getting kind of notice on national and international scale of people following our Facebook and our Instagram. And it was really just us being transparent on what we were learning, how we were learning it, and some of the challenges and successes that we were having. So after 2020, we were now running into a problem that there was no processors in our area. There was a lot of false promises that people made. There's a lot of black guys in the industry because farmers put in this crop thinking that they would have a place to go with it. and then we're left, with a lot of crop on their hands and no income. So we decided to be the solution to our problem, and we opened a processing facility in Great Bend, very much Aaron and Richard spearheading that. And so we now were able to work with farmers throughout the Midwest, contracting about 1,000 acres, and an acre is about the size of a football field. So about 1,000 acres throughout the Midwest, and really supporting them and giving them a blueprint of saying, this is how you do this is how you be successful, sell your product to us. Very passionate about transparency. We had contracts just like in the grain markets. You'll see as we go through this, we just wanted to be as transparent as possible to show the validity of this market and show farmers that this isn't a novelty crop and that this can be used in their operation to diversify. 2022, we continued to grow. 2023, again, continued to grow, really refined our methods and grew a very strong growers group. And 2024 pretty much stayed the same because our processing facility was maxed out in terms of the amount of product that we could take in. And now 2025, we've been able to triple capacity due to helping other processors throughout the Midwest supply their processing facilities. So one of the amazing things about social media and about connections and networking and our foundation as farmers is we're able to make those connections with other farmers more easily than someone that is not in the clique, and so we can talk to those farmers, and we have that inherent level of trust that allows us to at least start the conversation. So we now help other processing facilities as well. Okay, so I made this slide when I was going through and updating this PowerPoint and things like that. I made this slide in 2021 when I gave this presentation. And I just find it ironic that we are now in 2025. And when I made this, I was like, oh my gosh, who knows where we'll be at. We are very much on pace for it being an $18.6 billion market. So that's exciting. One, that projections are correct and that, they're doing a good job and people that do that. But to see the growth of the industry, to see the change of the industry in 2019, and I know hemp became legalized in the US in 2014 with the Farm Bill, but it really became mainstream in 2019. In 2014, only like 4 states could do it. So I based everything off of 2019. In 2019, there was 219,000 acres that were produced in the United States. Last year, there was 51,000. But I really believe it's quality over quantity. 2019, there's a lot of people left with empty contracts. There was a lot of people that didn't get paid for their crop. So we see acres going down, but we see the trend of fiber and grain, which I think is the more sustainable and scalable option, going up. So that's what we love to see. I think it will only continue to grow. You can see that corn is a $61 billion market. We have about 84 million acres in 24. Soybeans, which are a close second, they had, if it was 84, they had around 80 million acres, so 80 million football fields worth of soybeans. They've got homes for that. So these are the acres that we're competing with to get and move hemp to a more commercial scale. So exciting. We're still a drop in the bucket, but we are trending in the right direction. So this is something that I'm really passionate about. Ever since we started, we've always had to do a basic education on what is hemp and the difference between hemp and marijuana. And it's very easy to make it into something relatable. So I tell people, let's go into the grocery store. You walk into the grocery store, you're in the vegetable section, and you're looking, and you've got the bell peppers and you've got the jalapeno peppers. While they're both a pepper, they are very different peppers. That's what cannabis is. So you have cannabis at a high level, and then you've got marijuana, and you've got hemp. While they're both cannabis, they're 2 different types of cannabis. 0.3% is the level that differentiates it between marijuana or hemp. Now, something to think about, when you think about 0.3, like what is 0.3? If you're looking at medicinal, you're in the 20% THC. So significantly higher. Even if you grew 1% hemp, which would or 1% marijuana, which would put you 3 times over the legal limit of hemp, you would be the worst marijuana grower ever. Like you wouldn't get much sales from that. So just something to think about when you talk about scale in terms of what's hemp and what's marijuana. And what's interesting too is 0.3% is an arbitrary number. They actually just picked that number. There's no scientific basis for why they picked that number. And they're actually calling at the federal level for at least to be moved up to 1%. And so then that way it can kind of give farmers more leniency because they're really not. If you're producing marijuana, you're producing marijuana.
Because it's like a combination of like genetics and a light spectrum.
Yes.
Right, because the plant produces THC as a UV protectant. It protects the plant.
Yeah, I mean, it's all breeding. And as we go through this, you'll see that they're bred to be fiber plants. They're bred to be grain plants. They're bred to produce CBD or they're bred to produce THC. There's not a lot of cross carryover.
Different chemotypes.
Yes. So I just am going to highly touch on this, like full spectrum, broad spectrum, and CBD. You guys can go to any vape shop, any CBD store. I'm sure there's a plethora of them around, and they can do some basic education. But it's all of this full spectrum, broad spectrum, or CBD is all under that 0.3% of THC. So that's something to remember. Your full spectrum is going to give you a lot of those cannabinoids. There's 26 different cannabinoids within the CBD plant that they measure, and that's what you're going to see on that full spectrum. Broad spectrum is they've reduced that from a full spectrum down to a more narrow spectrum of products within that. And then the CBD isolate is just the CBD only. A lot of people that have to do drug testing or are worried about testing positive, like people with CDLs or something like that, they can lean towards CBD isolate and feel more confident that they're not going to potentially have a problem with the THC and getting trace amounts. So let's talk agronomically. This picture is kind of blurry, but we can go to this next one. So when you're growing CBD plants, these are grown in a greenhouse, they are grown indoors, and they are grown similar to like a Christmas tree farm. You can see these plants are 5 feet by 5 feet. We've got plastic down as a weed barrier. You can see our hoop house there. They're growing in pots on the inside. This is later throughout the season. Just a very different type of grow. More hands-on. You are using practices like topping, which is where you're cutting the top of the plant off and like forcing offshoots to create more buds. It's just very different. It's more managed. We'll say it that. It's more managed. You're more involved. You're spoon feeding those nutrients in, and that's what you're going to see there. You can see this here. So one thing that is really important when you talk about hemp and when you talk about the products that you're looking for, if you're a consumer, what is the end goal? And that is going to backtrack you into whether you are looking for a fiber, a grain, a dual purpose crop, or a CBD or a cannabinoid. So something to think about there. To show you these pictures, this is what the seed looks like. It's a very small seed. There's about 14,000 seeds in 1 pound. So you can kind of imagine what that would look like. You can see this grows very tall. Aaron's about 6 feet, and that irrigation pivot is
12 foot.
12 foot. Yeah. So you can see this is mid-season. This is about July. So that crop is moving up. And then the picture on the end is actually a crop that was growing for grain, and so it has a center column that is going to fill with those kernels, and it is physiologically, it looks like that because it's easier for the combine to come through and harvest that grain off of. So fiber crops look significantly different than grain crops. It's all about how breeding methods have been refined, so that way we can utilize equipment to scale this. Okay, so one thing that's kind of interesting about hemp. Yep.
I'm sorry, so dual purpose. Now is that for seed and fiber? I mean, that's where your dual purpose lies, right? Is where, because I'm interested in using the whole plant in anything that the plant can.
Yes. So regardless of what you choose, you're going to use the whole plant. So that's the coolest thing. Dual purpose, grain and fiber. The problem is there's not much grain processing facilities at this time. So you might grow it for dual purpose, but you might not be able to sell it for dual purpose. I know there is a small grain facility down in Wichita. They take very limited amount of acres, just because again, they're not scaled yet. So, but you'll see one thing that's very cool. And then even as we get to the end where we're talking about the processing facility, I'm gonna have to do a really good job to stay on time. There's so much cool information. There's no waste. We use everything down to the dust that we collect through our vacuum system. So when you are looking at genetics and things like that, and this is focused on any type, but specifically grain and fiber, latitude plays an extremely critical role. So let's be flatlanders and let's lay the world flat and look at that, what this would look like. Draw a line across, and you can see in the United States, because we have outlawed this crop for so long, we have lost a lot of those genetic traits that we used to have. So we are importing a lot of fiber and grain varieties from France, Italy, India, China, a little bit on the northern side of Australia, and then down in Argentina. So along with flat, fold it in half, and it's very important that the latitudes match. Hemp cannot go north to south, but it can go south to north. So any genetics that we're bringing down from Canada, because you've been able to grow in Canada forever and ever, they have a lot of prominent grain varieties up there. If you take them lower and enter them into the South Dakota or lower latitudes, they will fail. They can't handle the heat down here. They can't handle the light cycles and things like that. So it's just different. And one of the reasons I can tell you this is because we've grown over 30 different varieties on our farm. We actually grew some varieties from Ukraine. Like I said, we've done it all. But the Ukraine one, it was probably the funniest name, or the funniest. The guy his name was Roman, came over, sold me a seed. He's like, this is the best seed. And I'll get your question in a second. He's like, this is the best seed that you've ever had. And I'm like, hey, we'll try it. Like, we'll put in a few acres. Did terrible. Like, too far north, we're too far south. And I showed him pictures of it in the season because he said, hey, are you going to buy seed for next year? And I said, I don't think it's going to work. And he said, well, the problem is you didn't grow enough. It works more, or it works better the more you put in. And I'm like, I don't think that's how it works. But anyway, what was your question?
What is the best genetics that you found for our region, for our latitude?
Depends on what you're growing for. So if you are growing for Patagonia, Levi's, Wrangler, and you want that like textile grade quality, you're going to be looking at your Italian or your French varieties. If you are looking at biomass, which is what we want tonnage coming into our facility, because we are utilizing products like this to make all of these products here.
What was that you should?
Oh, sorry. This is called herd, and I'll show you that later.
Okay.
This is the inside of the plant, the woody substance of the plant. All of this is going to come from your Asian varieties. Now, something else to think about too, as you're growing, what are some challenges that you're going to have? So the Asian varieties have very fat fan leaves. And so you'll see a couple of pictures here and a few more slides. You know, the fan leaves will cover my face. You can't even see them. The European genetics have very long, slender leaves. And so if you are trying to achieve canopy cover and you are trying to suppress the weeds with lack of sunlight, these might not be the best fits for you. Or you're going to need to plant them at a significantly heavier planting population to close that gap. So again, just things that you've learned along the way and things that we've observed through like leaf shapes and things like that.
So our native, what we had before we outlawed everything, what would that be significantly different genetically from those ones that you're trying to reintroduce?
Probably not.
You know,
Probably not significantly, but the KDA, the Kansas Department of Ag, does not allow us to do any testing on ditchweed. So I can't, you know, we've had people like, why don't you just develop those genetics? They're obviously hardy, like they've made it through the decades, but legally we can't progress them.
Isn't there a federally held bank of
Seeds?
Of seeds that would.
Yes,
Like that.
there is, and I know Cornell and Oregon, they're very active in those seed banks and developing those genetics. We have also done seed production for US companies. Like, we love the US, we love our local economy, and we're trying to build local seed supply. But right now it's not at the volume, even for the minimal amount of acres that the United States has, they can't support that volume yet. So I know they're growing those seed banks, but we're not there yet. So right now we do have to import pretty much 99% if you want to grow in the US. So keys to success, having a plan before you go in, having an understanding of what types of products that you're wanting to come out with, and that's going to help you out here. So let's talk grain. We'll start there because there's a lot that you can go into in terms of fiber and herd when we get there. So we use our commercial equipment for grain harvest. And you can see here, see these fan leaves, how they're very wide, and the leaf is overall very wide. You're gonna close this row gap very quickly. And a lot of those weeds, you need sunlight, photosynthesis to give plants energy. The weeds and stuff that are emerging after the plant don't have the energy that it needs to break through and really choke down that plant. This was actually on July 4th. You can see there, 5'8", 5'9", so you can see how the plant progresses. But when we talk dual purpose, this is when the combine's coming in and it is cutting off the top of the plant. And we are feeding that grain through this head into the feeder house. And then we're actually sending it into the belly of the combine where it's called a concave, and it spins. And so based upon weight and air distribution, it is going to allow the seed to fall to the bottom of the combine and go into the grain tank here. And then the trash is going to get kicked out the bag. So the grain varieties do not have the cannabinoids in them. And so pretty much you're kicking out leaves out of the bag. Yes.
Do they have to be, is there so they're producing seed, right?
Mhm.
So they have to be pollinated?
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, so great point. Cannabinoid plants are females only, okay? And again, it all comes back to breeding. And so the cannabinoid plant, you do not want to introduce any males, and pollen can travel up to 22 miles. You do not want to introduce any males because it switches the focus of that plant. So all these female plants, they're like, we need to produce CBD. We need to produce all these cannabinoids. This is our job. And then the guy comes in and they're like, let's make grain. And so then the plant completely switches from cannabinoid focus and is now focused on reproductive and bringing its seed to the next season. So until that pollen is reduced, the plant only focuses on cannabinoid production.
So 24 miles pollination?
Yes.
Pollination?
Yes.
So do you have your CBD farm 24 miles from your hemp farm? How does that work?
So our CBD farm is more for agritourism.
Okay.
It is more for education.
Okay.
We don't really care about the quality of CBD that we're getting out of it. But yes, you would need it. Honestly, in my opinion, CBD should be grown indoor. Marijuana, that medicinal, should be grown indoor. And then the hemp or the fiber and grain is scalable. It needs to be outdoor. And there's actually counties in Colorado that you cannot grow cannabinoid.
Yep.
Or you can grow one, you can't grow the other.
Ruin crop.
Correct. And so they've actually put that into law that some farmers can and can't grow specific types.
Same in Northern California.
Yeah. In Kansas, that's not really a problem. We have such limited acres and most of the CBD guys are indoor. And so I don't foresee that ever being a problem. And if it ever did get pushed into legislation, I think farmers would have the backbone of the industry, just with the scale that we're putting out, that we would have the power in numbers. So for this, you're gonna see, we pulled off the top of the plant. We have all these stalks. We're gonna come back in and we're gonna lay those down on the ground, and that is what's gonna get baled for our fiber production. Now, if you are allowing the plant to get to grain production, it is not textile grade, okay? Because it is matured. And I love cross-referencing other industries. Think of veal. You have a very young calf that you're harvesting, and that is a delicacy. If you're growing for fiber, you have a delicacy. So you are not going to even want that plant to get to maturity because then you're going to degrade the quality of that fiber. So this is harvesting in September. If you're growing for fiber, for textile grade fiber, you are going to be harvesting mid-July. So significantly earlier.
Can you have multiple fiber harvests in a year?
Depends on where you're at. Pretty tough in Kansas, just because think of summer solstice. Most plants are flowering around, the summer solstice, and then it moves naturally to a more reproductive stage. If you're shortening that life cycle, you can do it. You're just not going to get the volume that you would expect. Now down in Texas, yeah, all day. California, they do 3 grows a year.
Because these are photo periods, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that's kind of what you see there. In order to go to grain, you do need about 120-day growing season. So it is going to be very similar to growing corn. You're going to put it in the ground in April. You're going to harvest it in late September, early October. One thing that we're very passionate about is variety development. So we need to find the best that works for this region. So we do trials like this. This block here actually has 10 different varieties every 10 feet. We're showing a different variety and then we are replicating it across that field 4 times because power of statistics, if anybody's taken a statistics class, we want to make sure that it's not a field variation that allowed this specific variety to win, so to speak, or lose. And so we want to see if we can replicate that over and over again. So we do this every year on our farm on a small scale on genetics that we're hoping to learn more about. And then we also do it on a large scale once we've kind of narrowed down what varieties that we think show the most potential. So you can see here, well, this one's kind of hard, but right here and over is one of our best producing varieties that we have our farmers grow. This was a variety that came into a close second behind this one. And then these 2 varieties had limited seed, but we've split the remaining circle in half. And so these are the 4 varieties that we have.
Do you always grow one as a control?
Yes. So this one over here, this is the control. This is one that we've grown since 2019, continues to outperform all the other varieties. And this is actually what we have our farmers grow. We do not have our farmers that contract for our processing facility. We don't have them grow anything experimental because we need consistency from seed to final sale. If you're a builder and you're getting a final product out of our processing facility, you don't want this farmer's bag to look different from this farmer's bag when you're building a house or you're building bioplastics or things like that, because then you've got to reconfigure your machines or your mixes or things like that. So consistency is so critical for us. So we have our farmers plant, in a very tight window, same variety, same planting density with a little bit of variation due to soil type and where they're at within the state or the Midwest. But we've really narrowed down this blueprint of success. So this is kind of what we look like at a large scale. This is our farming operation, our headquarters there, corn and corn.
Can you ever get crossbreeding between those genetics? Like if you've got 2 different crops planted right next to each other, will they crossbreed?
They will crossbreed, but it's not going to affect what we were focused on here. We were focused on tonnage. And when these varieties flowered, it was so different that it really wasn't going to affect the overall.
I just wondered if you would ever get like a really good crop because those 2 crop, maybe you're.
Like a seed blend type of thing.
Well, or just like your normal crop and then another crop next to you.
Oh, like
You
another
get
crop.
Even better,
Hybridized, like use the
Yeah, like
hybrid.
a natural hybrid.
No.
Because it would essentially be climatized,
Yeah.
microclimatized.
I mean, think about it, but also too, like chromosome counts and things like that, like that's all kind of got to match. And when this is flowering, our corn is not flowering.
Well, no, not.
Oh, you're talking about within the.
Yeah, I'm just saying 2 different
Yes.
genetic crops next to each other.
Yes.
You would think that there would be
Yes.
some crossbreeding.
This will crossbreed. It's right next to each other. But this variety, which we deemed more as a dual purpose and more grain focused, it was done flowering by the time this even started.
Okay, so timing's a little different.
Correct.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we found for fiber-focused genetics, we want these to stay in a vegetative state as long as possible. Our goal is biomass. We want them to grow as tall as possible. And the varieties that are dual purpose, they need to be finishing mid-September to October. So this is much more sensitive to the solstice than these varieties over here. So yes, you are correct, but no, it's not a problem with what we're doing here. So again, how you put this in the ground, these are called drills. And so this is how we're putting seed in the ground for fiber and grain. Cannabinoids are typically done by hand because like I said, they're in the greenhouse. We are focused on equipment that they're already utilizing. So if farmers are putting in soybeans, wheat, milo, this is the same equipment. There's nothing special about this. You're going to calibrate it based on seed size, which you do for any other crop anyway, because soybeans can be in a variety of sizes. So
Could a small farmer without large machinery make it a go with this?
oh yeah. So you can broadcast. That's one of the methods as well. I would recommend like renting like a broadcaster so it's evenly spread. If you had such like a smaller acreage, you could literally do it by hand. We would recommend a harrow, which is you're just going to scrape it across the ground and kind of put some seed soil contact together because that's really important. Seed soil contact tells the seed, hey, it's time to go. Because otherwise your seeds in your bags, like a bag of seed, you would just be germinating everywhere. And so once it touches that soil and it gets that pressure, it's like, yeah, baby, it's go time. Right? We know what to do now. And so I would recommend like a harrow.
Can it be done no-till?
Yes. So yes. So we've been no-till for over a decade. We've got farmers that are no-till. It's totally normal. Do you agree?
Yes.
Sorry. I just didn't like talking
Yes,
about it.
antibiotic farming is
Yes.
the best way.
Yeah, actually no-till could be preferred because we can use that cover crop and stuff to help suppress weed pressure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So this is our 2023 crop. I love, people do not, when I say vegetative state, these are actively growing plants. Like you go by in the morning, you go by in the evening, and I'm not kidding, some days you can tell the difference. So this was on 5-3. This is 30 days later. It's now, above my hip. We're talking 30 days later. It's now above my head. And then we take it about 30 or 40 days, and then it's about 14 feet tall, this crop. So I love just showing the progression, and you can break it down, like how many inches it's going to grow per day or by hour. You can almost put one of those time-lapse cameras out and watch this plant grow. So, but seed selection, like I talked about, your latitude is very important. Nutrients and water. A lot of people have a negative concept or an incorrect concept that hemp, because it grows in the ditches, like you can just put it out there and it will just grow. It's like a magic crop. I know you do have to feed it. It is a plant. You don't feed your tomatoes, you're not going to get very many tomatoes type of thing. It's the same thing on a crop. Now, how you feed it is up to you and your operation, whether you're very passionate about the organic side and you want to use litter or, some organic compost or something like that. Or if you are more towards like the urea and more man-made fertilizers and things like that. Like there's no wrong answers. There's room for everybody at the table in how you grow. And that's something that we feel very strongly about. Okay, so harvesting. All right, so this is my favorite part. Okay, so I'll start passing things around. So how do you know when you're ready to harvest? What does the end of the season look like for this plant? So this is actually a hemp stalk. You're essentially growing a stick. Now, this is for anybody that is going to have a dual purpose crop, or it is someone that is not textile grade fiber. So fiber from this plant is going to go into erosion mats or insulation batting or something like that. So it's going to be significantly different. The inside substance is called hurd. This outside is called bast fiber. Okay. So these are the two main products that your processor is going to want you to grow for. Let me pass this around. This one's got some more fiber strands on it. As the plant matures, so we talked about how it's a young plant. When it's young, it will not have any of this hurd inside of it. It will be like a straw. You can roll it between your fingers. As it matures, that hurd is going to fill in. So for our processing facility, we encourage our growers to let that hurd make it to the top of the plant. Because one, it's going to give you a heavier plant. It's going to make it more diverse. You're going to get paid off of weight, so you're getting more money. And most of our contracts are for this side of the table. And so we need to maximize efficiency of the processing facility and increase that fiber to herd percentage, or that herd to fiber percentage. That's kind of what we see here. These Asian genetics that we utilize on our operation will not reach flowering. And so when we talk about cross-pollination, you don't even have that option. Not gonna happen. So that's what our focus is. Let's see. Okay, video next.
Is her what you would like for hempcrete is it?
Hempcrete, yes, this is what you're going for. So there's different ways to take this crop down. This video is about over, but I can talk over it. So we use a side sickle, and these are things that your dad might have if he's got, if you know, in the back of the barn or in the tree row, or, you know, this is kind of outdated equipment, and it works great for what we're trying to do. This crop, or this video that just played is called a KP4, and it essentially has 4 of these stacked every 20 inches. And so that way you're breaking down that material into more manageable sizes. Our average farmer will grow anywhere from 14 to 21 feet of crop and of height. And so it's important that you can be able to manage it on the back end with a rake or a baler, and how you're going to get it to your processing facility. So this is kind of what you're going to see about the harvesting method. Sometimes for dual purpose, so for this crop, you can see we cut off the top, so the combine has come through this. You can come through with a swather, and you can lay that down, and this is what your field's going to look like. That's an option on crops that are like 6 feet or less. So the combine head at all the way at the top height goes to 6 feet. So if you're passionate about a dual purpose, this would be an option for you. Swathers are very common. Any baling operation will have them. This is a side sickle. So this is our 2022 crop. You can see we're coming in and we're just cutting it down, and then we'll come back in with further equipment to bale and bring it together.
So you bale them just basically like hay?
Yeah, I'll show you some pictures here in just a second.
Wow.
So it's gonna be a round bale. As you guys see, feeding your horses, this is what you're gonna get. This is what it's gonna look like. But you have to think it's gonna be those stalks. So they're very sturdy. And you can, I was telling, you can leave them a pile in the back if you want. Or is he seen it? Okay, perfect. Because I got more coming right here. So there's different ways that farmers operate, and they can either use a large square baler like this. And you can see it is just picking up those fibers and feeding it into the machine. That is going to compress, compact, tie it in a bow, and then kick it out the back. You're going to use this with corn stalks. You're going to use this with any type of hay, brome, fescue. Again, this is not specialty equipment to make this happen. Round bales can also do that as well. You can see them kicking it out there. We actually don't even own any balers. We custom and contract that all out with surrounding operators around us. And we've had nobody's refused to come back. Can we say that? You know, the hemp is normal wear and tear on your machine. You know, nothing crazy. This is what it's going to look like stacked up at the end of the season. We bring those to the edge of the field, and this is how it's going to get hauled off via truck to the processing facility, or you're going to load via round bale. So it just kind of depends. It's called a spider. No, that brings all the bales to the edge of the field.
Oh.
I've got some videos and stuff, but there's actually like stingers, and they have these like claws, and they come out the top of the machine, and they grab the bale and they throw it in the back, and then they go and they whip it up and they put it in a stack. It's the coolest thing. I think that video had like over 2 million views or something like that. It was insane, and I'm like, I didn't think it was that cool, but it kind of is. This crop, again, we're treating it just like any other crop. We take it to the scale, we weigh it. Our producers get paid off of volume. So a truck is typically around 26 tons. And so X amount of dollars per ton, and then that gives you what the farmer can do. This is another facility down in Texas that we help supply. So trucks get sent down there. This is what it looks like at their facility intaking. Trucks just line up and they get unloaded.
Is there an average ton per acre?
Yeah, so it depends. Good question. If you are talking about fiber only, I feel confident, depending on your variety, both the varieties that we recommend, you can achieve like 4 ton an acre. If you are dual purpose, you're probably gonna be closer to the 2 ton per acre because you're cutting a lot of that seed off and the plant is naturally not going to grow as tall. So you'd be at around 2 ton an acre. This is one of our farmers in Washington, Kansas. This was his crop. He did 6.5 ton an acre. He had really great soil. This was round bales that he brought to us. This is why I show this, but the part that I love the most is that we are building economic power within rural communities. And that is something that continues to get harder and harder to do, just with people moving to more urban areas. This crop is extremely drought tolerant. And so this farmer had 4 inches of rain. If you remember 2022, it was very, very dry that year, very extreme drought. We were in D4 drought, which is the worst level that you can get. He had 4 inches of rain from the time he planted to the time he harvested. For retrospect, normal would be 12 inches. So he had 1/3 of the rainfall that he normally got. He still averaged 1 ton an acre. He did not harvest any of his other crops. They did not make it to harvest because they died. And so that's cool. Like, that's drought tolerant. That's options for farmers. One thing that is kind of challenging about this farm, and this is like kind of a hot topic, so don't like throw anything at me. It's not genetically modified. Okay. There's room for GM and non-GM. That's a whole different conversation I could spend hours on. But this is not a genetically modified crop. So it is a broadleaf. It is considered a broadleaf. That's why it has such big leaves. And so if you kill any type of broadleaf weed, you're also going to kill your broadleaf crop. So you have to be careful on what you spray on it. Yes. Okay, so this guy's down in Pittsburgh. His crop is beautiful. It averaged 17 feet. And so harvesting was kind of a challenge for him just with the volume of materials that he was working with, which you can see is an absolutely beautiful crop that he did there. And there's kind of a size reference for you. And then Chris Pringle over in Winfield, he's actually finished at 21 feet. And so these are just monster genetics that we're bringing in, which is exciting because it's potential as well.
Do you know, was his crop irrigated?
No, his was dry land. Yes. So, and again, it depends on where you're at in the state. So, but his was dry land.
It's like you cut it green, just have to lay on the ground for a couple weeks to get dry.
Yep, about 14 days. It's called retting. So with that hemp stock, nature's so cool. It builds all of these things that the hemp needs, and then we break it down, for lack of better words. So the fiber that I talked about in the herd, it is bound together by a substance called pectin. Pectin is essentially nature's glue, and it is binding these 2 layers together. Now, we can bring this stock into the processing facility and we can run it through our machine and not get it to naturally separate, or we can do a process called retting. And retting is when we leave it out and we let the sun, water, and microbes do our job for us. And they will actually break that pectin down. And so then that way, when it comes to that one stalk that was going around and the fiber was pretty much falling off of it, that's what we want. Because then we're much more efficient at the processing facility. We can run more material through our machine, and Mother Nature did the hard work, not our machine. So that's kind of the differences that you see there. But yes, you do lay it down. When it finishes, it'll be a nice tan color instead of green.
You have to flip it.
Nope, not if you leave it all spread out. So that's the goal. This is our processing facility in Great Bend. We are small but mighty. We run about 1 million pounds of material through our processing facility a year. Another processing facility that we work closely with down in Texas, they have 25 times the processing capacity that we do. So just think in terms of potential, how many acres they can be able to absorb. And so we feel very strongly that we're happy that we're not turning away farmers, because we're not going to irresponsibly contract. That's where you run into problems. We know that this machine can handle 1,000 acres, period. So anything over that, somebody's either not getting paid or I'm sitting on material that doesn't have a place to go and it's costing us. And so we are very diligent on the number of acres that we would take. Once we hit that number, we said, hey, we can't take any more. So By partnering with other facilities, it gives us power and numbers to bring in more farmers, allow more crop diversity, and especially with crop prices the way they are right now, which are very low. I'm sure you guys don't get the market text messages like I do in the morning and the evening, but I can tell you that they're not fabulous. And so people are looking for other options. I'm doing good. Okay, fire processing facility. It is the bottleneck of the industry. Right now, there's about a dozen processing facilities working at a commercial scale. Okay, so think a dozen, and there's 51,000 acres. And let's just say for rough numbers, you can do 4 ton an acre, which some acres are going to do much better than that, et cetera. You now have 200,000 tons of material. Divide that by 12, that's a lot of material that people are having to push through. And so getting more processors online, that is something that we love helping the industry do because we think that this is what it's going to take. It's going to take a lot of like mini Walmarts around and not the big super Walmarts to really get this off the ground. This really needs to be regionalized because we are very cost ineffective once we put things on the truck, okay? Because this is such a light material, it's not very dense. It's very expensive to ship on a per pound basis. So good news is we are supported by the Kansas Department of Ag and the Kansas Department of Commerce. We love transparency. They love coming out, doing tours, educational events at our facility. So again, just bridging that gap between consumers and producers.
Is the demand there for the current supply, or is it one
Yes and no. So one of the challenges is this chicken before the egg, right? Okay, you can't ask Levi's to say, hey, spend millions of dollars, adjust your equipment to handle this new type of fiber, but we can only supply you for 6 weeks. We only have enough material to give you for 6 weeks, and then you're either gonna have to either let that machine sit idle, or you're gonna have to switch everything back over. So they're calling for more acres, and they say, put more acres in the ground, and we're saying, where can we get some reassurances that you're gonna buy it? You know, because if you don't buy it, we don't have a place to go with it. Like nobody's doing this. And so everybody's very cautiously moving forward. We see acres increasing. We see more processors coming online. More manufacturers are making that change, but it's a very slow process. And so that's kind of where we're at there. This is an extremely powerful crop for Kansas. Just because it is so hardy in terms of heat tolerance and drought tolerance. So it's one thing that's really amazing. A lot of our soil types, this plant can be very, very successful in. So exciting for what we're doing. Scalability and equipment that farmers already have on their operations. This is what it looks like going into our machine with a round bale. And then this is right before it gets sent through a series of rollers that separate that fiber from the herd. And so the reason we're specific and why we've been able to narrow down exactly what we need, because ultimately this machine tells us what we can and can't do, and what this machine can handle. So when we talk about crops, that is actually a hemp car at the end, and it is driven with hemp fuel. Henry Ford made it, and so it's actually in a museum somewhere, don't ask me where. It does travel around. This was at a big hemp national show. But that car is made from hemp. We have companies like 3D Vision, which this is up here, and I really encourage you to come up here. I was going to pass all this stuff around, but I talked too much. 3D Vision is someone that uses a 3D printer, chess sets, sunglasses, vases. That's all coming from the herd, so the inside of the plant. So we'll kind of go over that part real quick. Let me start there. So the inside of the substance, or inside of the plant, we have the herd. Our machine produces several different types of herd, okay? So we've got several different sizes. It sizes and sorts it. That's one of the downline machines that does that, because people that want this size don't want this size, and vice versa. Like, the manufacturers are very specific and their specifications are very tight on what they will allow for their machines and how their machines are set. So if you are doing bioplastics, Samsung, things like that, this is what you're looking for. It's a very flat, light, fluffy material, and that herd, and that's what there's going to be there. If you are passionate about hempcrete, this is going to be your size. If you are making like hemp blocks. So think of like Lego blocks where they literally stack them together. It's going to be more like this. And so we've got sampled all of that up here. This is actually a house down in Hondo, Texas. That they used our herd in. And so you can see that there.
Is there any producers in Kansas that are buying? Or is it, I mean, are you shipping it out?
I'm a producer. We are buying. No, we are actively contracting acres right now. So all these products up here, another thing I'm very passionate about, are all U.S. made. So this is a company out of Kentucky, utilizes the herd and the fiber together, and they compress it with a soy-based resin. And so this is actually flooring that you can do. They do cabinetry, things like that, like beautiful pieces. On the hempcrete side, goodness to you. That is what a hempcrete block looks like. Yes, sir?
So like, how does, when it's in the barrels, right, and square or circle, like, you're collecting the fiber and the herd, right?
Yes.
So how does that get
Sorted.
distinguished there?
Yeah.
Like, cause
Yes.
you're just wanting to use the herd, right?
Yes. Yes. People that want herd don't want fiber, and people that want fiber don't want herd. So the machine has a series of 12 rollers. And so you can see as it fed into there, then it starts a series of rollers of stripping that fiber from the herd, which again is why we want the farmers to do the most in the field and do the work for us. The herd falls to the belly of the machine and gets off-taked to a different set of cleaners and size and sorters. And so that goes out that way. The herd gets spit out the other end of the machine, and that is going to go through a cone and cleaner. So think of like an industrial sized hairbrush, and it is going to open those fibers up, and it is going to allow any remaining herd that got stuck in there, it's going to clean all of that out. And so that's how it separates that way.
Yeah, I was curious because I didn't know if you guys were doing like a chemical processing.
No chemical, all mechanical. Yep, so we get monitored by the state fire marshal, and one thing that was really cool in an educational process when he showed up, he showed up one day, full tactical, everything, body cam, all the thing. He's like, "Are you Melissa Nelson?" And I was like, maybe. He goes, "I'm here to inspect your processing facility." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, come on in." He spent 2 hours going through. The state fire marshal went 2 hours through the facility. And at the end, he was like, "Why am I here?" And I said, "Great question. We are glorified hay grinders, ultimately." And so he went back to the legislative body and really went to bat for us and said, "Hey, these are agricultural processors, we don't have THC. There's no THC in what we produce." And so we actually got to fall under a different set of guidelines. He still monitored us. We still get audited every year, all the things, but we don't have to account for all of our THC and things like that because we don't have any. So this company is called Hemp Home Styles. They do more like refined products like cutting boards and things like that. One thing that's very cool about hemp herd, these are pellets for heat stoves, for stoves. Don't recommend this for Traegers. There's no aroma or anything, nothing good. So it's just going to burn. So if you have any type of pellet stove, this is a great option for that. That is material that is like this, and it's actually, there's a pellet mill close to us that binds this with steam. And so we've actually worked with the UK, and back when they had a heating shortage a few years ago, so when they had a heating shortage a few years ago, they were looking for alternative sources of fuel. And so hemp was able to do that. It burns clean. And so then they were able to pass the safety checks and things like that. Then,
Is there a separate process for cattle feed?
so we are not legalized for cattle feed.
Okay.
Yes.
I know you just said that K-State, that study.
They are. They're working on studies. The Hemp Feed Coalition is a national coalition, and they are working very hard, and they've got it approved for laying hens. So the grain, which is here, is essentially a superfood. And you can open it if you want. It's a superfood. It's got high omegas, high fats, great protein content, and if it's good for us, it's also good for animals. And so, again, another feed source besides corn or soybeans. And so It is approved in laying hens. It is not approved in cattle at this time. And you can do it in companion animals, so horses or pets or things like that. So anything that's not going to be harvested. I'll pass these around. This is the 3D printing.
So when you say grain, you mean seed, correct? Or am I confused?
It's seed. Yeah,
Okay.
this is
Same difference.
kind of. Typically, they call seed like things that you're going to plant and
Okay.
grain as the harvested.
Okay.
So we're talking about the same thing. We're just calling it seed.
Gotcha. That's why I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. So
durable?
kind of. I mean, this guy is 3D printed, and I bet he has 100,000 miles on him. I mean, with the amount of tours that we do, and the amount of people that have handled him and things like that. I have one crack because I set my bag down on top of it, but very durable there. Yeah. So everything that I'm talking about right now is insulation, heat sourcing, all of that. So, all right, let's talk here real quick. We'll talk fiber. I know we're reaching the end of our time. And I'm going to backtrack for just a moment with that grain that's going around. Grain also can produce oil, so it's called a cold press. So this is like cooking oil or oil that you're going to get in natural shampoos or makeup or things like that. If you open this up, it's very much like olive oil, okay? For reference, this is CBD oil, well, technically distillate. So this is the part before it gets turned into the oil like that you would ingest or put on aching elements or things like that. You can see this is like got the like molasses. So 2 very different types of oil when you're talking hemp.
Now, could you use your hemp seed oil as a base oil for products like that?
Yeah, that'd be great. When we talk dust, when I talk about zero waste, we literally have zero waste. We have a huge vacuum system that sits over our machine and sucks all the dust out of the air. This dust will be used for ceramic tiling, and so that's an option for that. You can see it has a different consistency than the micronized. Here, I'll show this. This is what you're going to use for bioplastics. You see it's very fluffy. Can I borrow that real quick? This is very dense. So it's different materials, and so different outputs, or different outlets. Okay, so let's talk fiber real quick, and then we're 5 minutes. Okay, so for fiber, you're going to get textile grade fiber, and you're going to get non-textile grade fiber. If you are talking textile grade fiber, it is going to go through a series of processes. It is going to originally start out like this. This is very unrefined fiber. This is something that has went through a comb and cleaner. This is a product after the comb and cleaner. It's got to go be degummed. So I'll open this one. If you'd like to feel this, it's very waxy. It feels very waxy. And so that wax has to be stripped off the plant before it can go to like a spinner and be made into yarn. Now, if you touch this one, softer. So from there, it's going to be degummed, second on. And then it's going to head to a spinning facility where it's going to be made into yarn. And there's different types of yarn. This is a lady out of Florida, and her company is called Shemp. She blends alpaca, wool, and hemp together. And so this is what that yarn is going to look like. This is someone that is going to be made into like a t-shirt, like Patagonia and what they're going to do. And that is 100% hemp. Yes?
Is there supposed to be glasses in that case?
They might have gotten separated. Do you want to see another one in there?
Also, the wool over there is alpaca wool, and this is also alpaca wool.
I like that. Soft, isn't it? Yes. So the lady with the Shemp, she also, one of her 2 main products are hats and socks, and I think it's very funny that that's what she's passionate about because she lives in Florida, and I'm like, I don't feel like she does at all, but she has a big market in Colorado, and that's where she sells it.
So are you producing textile grade fiber at your?
No, so there's a facility in North Carolina called Biofill, and they help supply that. Because, again, logistics, all of the textile companies are typically on the East Coast. And so, because they're importing a lot of that material in. So it doesn't economically make sense for us to grow textile grade fiber because then we would have to ship it halfway across the country. And so He grows that, but he doesn't grow like any herd because we have most of the herd market here in the Midwest. So, a few more things. Rope. This has been used since World War I.
I thought that really
Longer than that.
Yeah, longer than that. So that is a company out of California. They're called Hemp Traders. And then this is actually their whole stack of swatches of fabric that they can do in California as well. And last thing, Hemptopia. Again, made in the USA. Love supporting those products. This is like a bath towel and things like that. So I think for the most part, that's me. I mean, consumers drive demand. So it's you as a consumer calling for your people that you buy products from. They have to hear that you want something different in order for them to invest that money and do that because it costs money. At the end of the day, everything costs money and they've got to justify that expense and say that you're willing to do that. So you will see that, like if you purchase a hemp shirt, it's going to be more expensive than a cotton shirt for now because supply demand, you're not going to have the supply there until the demand reaches more and then we can increase supply and then your costs will go down. When we ship it out of our processing facility, go to manufacturers, this is what's going to look like. It's big super sacks of raw material, and then from there it gets made into the products that we get passed around here. Last thing, economic development. Again, this is something I'm very passionate about. We do around 100 tours a year at our facility, so if you are willing to make the trek out west to come to Great Bend, we are happy to show you around our farm and show you what we do in our processing facility. And this is 2022 data. This is a slide I had available, but we have around 1,000 people every year. And that's everything from insurance agencies, legislative bodies, homeschooling groups, like it doesn't matter. We will educate you all and just share our story and what we're doing. We have people coming in from over 33. Last year we had 39 states. And we typically have around 5 to 7 countries every year. Literally people coming in to see what we're doing and take this and make it regional for their area and make it successful for their area. How we advocate: social media, South Bend Industrial Hemp on Facebook, South Bend Hemp for Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn, Melissa Nelson. Again, good, bad, ugly. We love just putting it out there because if you can learn from our mistakes, we're happy to help. Public speaking events like this, at every level, local, state, national, international. We do have an open house biannually. So we had an open house last year, so we won't have one until 2026. But that is a very big event. We have several hundred people come out to our farm. We bring in these people that make all these products. We have them come in, they set up booths, and we typically do a workshop on the second day so you can really get your hands dirty and learn about this crop and things like that. Publications, we've done a radio show for the last 5 years. We actually did our last episode in January, but we have all of those saved on our website if you'd like to hear our radio show. Again, just sharing what we do. So thank you for interacting, asking questions. Very much enjoyed talking to you guys.
So like, what if you made a ton of stuff and it did sell? So like, I don't know if that situation.
Oh yeah, no.
So how do you store that? Do you guys have silos or do you guys store it, cover it up? Like how do you?
Yeah. So the good news is.
What is the long life of that?
Yeah. The good news is we're always planning 1 year out. That's a hard part about farming. Like we're already setting up 2026 crops and 2025 hasn't even gotten into the ground yet. And so the good news is it takes a while to get processing facilities up and going. And we kind of have our ear to the ground. So if we hear when that 25 processing facilities are going to open in the next year, that's something we need to be cognizant of when we're contracting those acres. But we know that we have to protect our investment and we can handle at least 1,000 acres. And so you just kind of have to be conscious of that. You have to continue to develop those relationships. These people, they love our herd. These builders love our herd. And so as long as we're price competitive and we continue producing the high quality product that they expect, it's just like customer retention in any industry. That's our goal. And so as more players enter the market, people are going to have brand loyalty or loyalty to what we're working towards and are going to understand the big goal and want to be a part of it. So it's a work in progress.
Explain that there's a waiting list for.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, we have a wait list currently for our product. So I feel
There's
very,
no surplus.
there's no
There's
surplus.
silo, there's no warehouse.
No.
But right now, you can't process enough to supply it.
We're always probably 3 months out on delivery.
So the equipment, I'm sorry, just to get back to, that you said that there can be adjustments in traditional equipment. Like, so the local farmers that are around that are kind of getting screwed right now by USAID, is there a lot of those guys that are probably gonna go into hemp, do you expect? Is that, I mean, are you seeing that?
Yeah, that's what we're seeing, for guys wanting to diversify their farm and grow different crops and just utilize it. Yeah, they're adjusting, and it does make a difference, like now how, grain markets are not great, corn's down, soybeans are down, all the inputs we use are up. So this is a way, number one, it's a cheaper crop to grow per acre, so you have less money out of your pocket to grow that crop.
You can do it on dry
And
ground.
then you can also have a better return.
I mean, that is the definition of diversity.
Yeah.
So when markets on the traditional crops are up, like we've got our core set of farmers that have this in their crop rotation, and then things like right now, we don't ever sell it, but it's an easier conversation for farmers to enter the room and be like, what do you have here? What is the potential? And so, yeah, right now we're, half of our farm that grows corn, soybeans is not loving this. And then the other half that is producing hemp, we're like, okay, let's take this.
And really, the only thing that's keeping you guys from going full hemp is the process.
Yes and no. I mean, we would never want to put all of our eggs in one basket.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be
You
diverse.
have to rotate it. It makes a difference for weed management and water management and the conditions of your soils. And even if we could sell corn for $20 a bushel, we would never grow all corn because we have to have some beans, wheat, milo in that rotation.
Okay, so you are rotating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
With it.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you grow corn on corn on corn on corn, you are going to have corn rootworm. If you grow hemp on hemp on hemp on hemp, you're going to get pressures there.
Huh.
And so we're very clear with our farmers, this needs to be rotational.
How many years is that rotation period recommended?
We've done 2 years hemp on hemp, but the thing that we really stress is there's not a ton of tools in the toolbox for farmers to combat these pests. And so why create a problem when there isn't one? So we recommend just one and done, one and move on, and then come back to it.
How many years before you would come back to the same?
3, probably 2 or 3,
Ideally,
depending.
3, just because that's our rotation. But I mean, you could come back maybe a year or 2 after, but we typically do like a 3-year rotation.
Yeah, so so just like a quick rotation here. Corn is a crop that requires you to put a lot of inputs into it. You have to feed it pretty heavily. Soybeans is a crop that's a nitrogen fixation. So it pulls nitrogen out of the air and it puts it in the ground. And so that's less inputs that you have to put on there. So we typically like to follow corn after soybeans because the soybeans have taken free nitrogen and put it in the ground and we didn't have to pay for it. And then the hemp can follow that corn because it's a lower input cost. And so we're not going to have to put a lot of food or fertilizer into the ground to get that yield potential. So that would be a pretty easy rotation. every 3 years.
So how would that work with no-till? Because I mean, if you're not necessarily doing a rotation, or if you wanted to grow hemp solely, how is that possible?
It is, you're going to have problems a few years down the road. So I would recommend if you have even a small parcel of land, divide it half and half and put something on one half and then just flip flop back and forth.
Right.
Could you plant it biodynamically?
What do you mean by that?
So companion planting. as
Oh,
far as,
yeah. Okay.
Introducing, companion species, back to trapper baker systems, for pests.
I've never done it. I don't know why you couldn't do it. But I don't have any data on that.
At scale, it's really tough to do, but if you have 5, 7 acres, something like that, I mean, it's absolutely doable. And
Oh yeah, I mean, there's people that grow wheat and soybeans at the same time and things like that at scale, and they make it work. I've just never seen it done with hemp. And the reason I think that would be a challenge is because of the rapid vegetative growth. You're going to shade out any of your shorter crops. And so they're going to have to be a pretty short season crop to be able to pull that out by the time the hemp is tall and to take away from that sunlight. But
Sure.
I'm open to, I'm open.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.